All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jen Espinosa-Goswami, and I'm so excited to bring to you our first guest expert, Kielyn Simonson of Organice. Kielyn and I met actually quite a while ago. We met in Fit for Mom, which is a local fitness group, and we were runners together. We had a good time, and we realized we were both business owners. So I decided that I really needed her to come on because everyone was raving about how amazing Kielyn is at keeping your place organized. So I'm excited to have her come here today. Welcome, Kielyn.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yay! Especially when it comes to the kitchen, I have a lot of people who are like, I need to meal plan, I need to do all these things, but it's very frustrating because I don't know how to do it. My kitchen's a mess. My husband isn't on board with this. It is really hard to have that habit if your kitchen is a disaster zone. So I thought Kielyn would be perfect as a guest expert for this month of September as we're getting a little bit normal. If you all are watching this live stream, you may notice that StreamYard is asking for your permission. That means that we cannot see your comments or your name with your comments unless you give permission to StreamYard. So do that process. It's a very quick process, but I will be moderating comments while Kielyn walks us through what she's going to be sharing today. So Kielyn, you don't have to worry about the comments. And let me do a proper introduction. So I did mention Kielyn is through Organice, professional organizing, but here is what you need to know about her. She says that she believes everyone deserves to love their home, and she works with clients to overcome their clutter challenges. I know if you've seen my photos that I've posted, I have clutter everywhere in my house. And she helps you reveal a space that brings you joy. She will work with you to reduce clutter, create new systems, and I'm totally system oriented, so I feel this, and develop organizational skills that can be used in any space, today, specifically your kitchen. And when you work with Kielyn, you get a non-judgmental partner. So she's not going to judge what your kitchen looks like, what your systems look like currently. She will help you figure it out so it works for you. So welcome, Kielyn.
Thanks. Do you want me to just start my spiel?
Go into it. We're here to listen to you today.
So I have a few different slides for you here too as a reference point. So if you want to reference any of the information that I'm talking about, that would be helpful. So if you want to pop up the first one, Jen, that would be
Yeah,
great.
if you're watching via the group, which you should be, I'm going to be putting oh good, we're live in the group. I'm going to be posting a photo. So look in the comments because I'm having issues sharing otherwise.
Fair enough. So
Technology.
yeah, and when you're trying to create an organized kitchen, I think there's three different zones that are important to focus on. The first one is your pantry or your food storage. Secondly, it's your fridge. And then it's everything else, being strategic and efficient in the way that you store things for your kitchen and how you use your space. So I like to encourage my clients to think about zones and everything. So I think if you've ever worked with me, you know I talk a lot about homes. Everything needs to have a home, and hopefully everyone in your family that is involved in putting things away and using your space knows exactly where those homes are. So that's consistency. You know, we're training just as much as you're training yourself. So you have a system that works for you. You have to train your family so that they are also consistent in putting things away and helping you out, because no mom that I know really wants to have to do every single thing. So I have heard that husbands and kids can be the downside of any good organizing system. So it does have to be kind of a family affair of trying to get things in order together. So zoning your food. Um, it helps to have some. I like containers in pretty much everything, and the reason for that is because containers can give you they give you boundaries, so you know exactly where to look, and you know if it's not in that specific spot that you don't have anything else. So that helps a lot for grocery shopping and doing that kind of thing. So my pantry, my food storage is pretty much all binned, so it keeps things much easier for me to track. A lot of my clients complain about having they buy duplicates, they can't keep track of what they have. And so once we once we add a little bit of limitation or at least zones for different categories of food, it really helps solve that problem. I'm going to take you on a little journey over to my pantry, and I'll show you a few of the bins that I have. So if you look behind me, you can see, you won't be able to see super well because changing my camera angle isn't great with this system that I know of anyway. So you'll see I have white bins that I use to contain my stuff. And then I have a can organizer that I use to contain my canned goods. I use a lot of the same types of products with pretty much every client. And it's because I found them to work really well. So it just helps to think through different places. So in terms of food storage, I also like to keep vinegars and oils separate and accessible by the oven. So I often use a Lazy Susan for that. There's going to be a photo in one of the slides showing how I use a Lazy Susan. It's the middle photo, and it's you'll see that I have all vinegars and oils within a Lazy Susan, so you know exactly where to look and you can just turn it around and keep track. Spices are the other thing that I like to have within spitting distance of the oven if possible, so that you have them nice and available. It's all dependent on your level of obsession and perfection. I'm admittedly a little bit of a psycho about that, but it's my job, so I have to be. But so I'm a huge fan of having uniform spice jars and uniform labels and keeping your spices all together so that and stored in an easy place where you can access them for the kitchen, because you really just don't want to be wandering around your kitchen looking for all the different things that you need. So I have a before and after here posted that I did with a client. She had one of those gorgeous closet pantries that are open and beautiful, but she just didn't have any systems within it. So we did a lot of work on pulling everything out. So I'll talk a little bit about how you would go through the process of organizing your kitchen once I'm done talking about some of the basic principles that I use. So
Kielyn,
any questions or comments so far?
we're going to pause for 1 second. So you mentioned a couple of slides, and I am trying to post them in the group. So for those of you who are watching us live, the photos are coming. I'm just not able to get them to post right now on the capabilities I have. So I will post the photos perhaps after this is over and I'm able to post those. But she did reference a couple of photos so far. The first one had to do with how you organize your kitchen and the areas in which the order within which you order within which you organize them.
Yeah. Yes.
And then she shared a Lazy Susan situation. I will show you that when I'm able to post that. For some reason, it's not letting me from my phone. So
That's all right.
Anyone have any questions on those items so far? And I don't see any questions coming in. So you may go ahead and cruise forward, Kielyn.
Perfect. So I'm going to give you a few examples of the categories that you can use when you're arranging your food. At least for me, I have one for pastas, one for grains and rice. I have snacks. I have kid snacks. I have shelf stable, kind of my meal prep ingredients. I have my vinegars and oils, like I mentioned. I have bread, and then I have drinks and the hot chocolates and the teas and things like that. So the thing is, though, you don't know your categories until you pull out your food and sort it. So that's always the first step of anything. Is it will always look worse before it gets better because you have to pull everything out. What I like to do is pull it out and use all your counter space and sort by type, and then your categories kind of emerge as you go. It's also a great time to look at your expiration dates and make sure that if you have a pantry that hasn't been working for you very well, or cabinet space, that you find the long lost items in the back. So that's another good argument for bins, because if you have particularly deep cabinets or a pantry, it makes it easier for you to access the things in the back and things just don't get lost. The other benefit of having things in different zones by type is that when you're shopping, you know exactly where to look. If you're meal prepping, like Jen will teach you to do, you will know exactly where to go to see if you have the cream of mushroom or the pasta that you need or whatever, so that you can make your recipe without having to buy more duplicates or ending up with like 7 cinnamons or something because you couldn't keep track of where your spices were. So that's some basic principles of the pantry. The other thing about pantry items is, I mean, once you kind of get in a groove of meal prep, you kind of get to know what you buy a lot of, and you start to get into a rhythm, and it gets a lot easier for you to maintain your cabinet without just buying whatever. And I find making my shopping list based off of what I'm meal planning versus just going to the store is a whole lot easier. And I just keep a running shopping list on my fridge as we run out of things. I kind of have my basic things that I know I'm going to run out of pretty much every week. And then I have the things that I run out of from meal prep related things.
Hey,
So
Kielyn, I have a couple of questions on that because things are coming up and I've heard
yeah.
from other people too. What do you do if your pantry is quite deep and you
Mm-hmm.
have some of those shelf stable items that maybe don't expire very quickly? But
Right.
is there a good way to keep track of, like, to label them differently or put them in a bin differently so that they don't expire before you get around to using them? Because cans, maybe not so much, but maybe some of the other
Yeah,
shelf stable foods.
like your grains and your pastas and your like hamburger helper or your macaroni and cheese, like those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Um, I really recommend divvying down, sorting by type as much as possible, and then dividing into deep bins if you can, because it's so much easier to pull a bin out of your cabinet if you
Mhm.
can fit it
Okay.
than it is to go looking in the back, because things get lost in deep pantries, so in deep cabinets. So it's a lot easier. You can get you can get pretty inexpensive clear plastic bins at Target that are pretty good. Usually they're actually called fridge organizers, but I often use them in deep pantries because they're nice. They're built for it.
And it sounds like, based on your photos that I'll be sharing in the group,
Mm-hmm.
you recommend clear bins for everything, for all
Mm-hmm.
organizing purposes. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's partially aesthetics, and it's partially because I don't like things getting lost. And when you're looking at food storage, it's just easier to see what you have at a glance if it's clear. Um, if you have more space and it's kind of like you have one of those beautiful closet pantries, it's a little easier to do a bin that isn't clear because you can quite easily see. But if you're in tight quarters trying to work in an efficient kitchen, I recommend clear so you don't lose anything.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Should we move on to the fridge?
Oh, yes. The fridge is a disaster zone in my house.
Yes. So the fridge is another it's another great hotspot for things to get lost. If you've ever found like the random yogurt in the very back of the fridge that definitely went bad before you could use it, you know how important it is to have a spot for everything in your fridge. So just like the pantry, I zone out my fridge. So I've got your fridge comes with preset drawers and things, and I use one of them for fruits. I use one of them for vegetables. I use one for dairy, and then I use bins for drinks. I use bins or like general for like yogurt and packets. Um, and then I also have a spot that I always put my leftovers in clear Pyrex so that I can see what they are. I put them towards the front of the fridge so I make sure that I use them before they get bad. Every fridge is different, so you have to customize with what you have, but don't feel limited by what option your fridge has, because you can always add bins, you can always add organizers that will help customize your fridge to what works for you. And sometimes it can seem a little silly to buy organizers for your fridge, but when you're not wasting food and you're using your stuff, you're saving yourself money that way, so you're not wasting anything. So again, I like bins in the fridge because you can pull out that stuff that gets stacked, the little things in the back, so that you don't lose anything. So especially for smaller items like yogurts or pudding cups or anything small like that. Um, I also like to use the doors for condiments, but even then I sort of sort out by different kind of types so that I know where to look when I'm going in my fridge. In my freezer, I also bin by different types, so I have a couple different places to look. So it just keeps things a little bit quicker and keeps me from losing things when I'm cooking. I want to be as quick as possible because, I mean, especially if you're a mom, you want to get in. There are so darn many meals, and it feels like you're constantly cooking, especially now with people being home more. Efficiency is so important when you're cooking because you just want to get in, get out, and be done.
Right. Right. So one of the challenges we have with condiments in my household, we have a big fridge door and all
Mm-hmm.
most of the condiments live on the fridge door.
Right.
But I will say some of them could probably be 2 or 3 years old. How often do you go through your condiments and just like toss things?
Yeah, I mean, I probably go through every few months and just do a little bit of a roundup of stuff because there are things that get lost, like cheese. I feel like you kind of have to go through your cheese every few months and make sure you haven't missed anything. So I'll do
Yes.
a little wipe down of the general surfaces, and I'll make sure I check through all of my condiments and things like that just every few months when you're doing a deeper clean of your house. If you stay on top of it, it's really not that bad and you won't get anything from 2010 that you find, but it's all about maintenance and being consistent.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So, any other questions about fridge?
I don't see any coming in. Another question I had though, because hey,
Yeah.
I have you here. I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you my questions too. um, we, I end up throwing a lot of leftovers out. So the
Mm-hmm.
leftovers are kept in clear plastic containers,
Yep.
and still they end up in the back of the fridge just by default. Like people push things in and they end up in the back of the fridge. So I'm ending up throwing them away because they're moldy. What do
Yep.
you recommend for leftovers in particular, especially the single
Yeah.
serving size ones?
Yep. Okay. A couple things. One is to actually plan leftovers into your meal planning. So, when you're planning out lunches, leftovers make great lunches because they're already ready. So when you're boxing up your leftovers at the end of the night, um, put them in one person store single serve containers so that it's really easy for you to just warm it up for the next meal. I think part of the barrier for people is putting them in big containers because then it's a pain. And if you're running, and I often find that I'll book a job over the lunch hour, and then when I come home, I'm just starving, and so I have to eat pretty quickly. And if I want to make a healthy choice, and so if I make it as easy as possible to succeed, that really helps. And I also put all of my leftovers in one central place towards the middle of the kitchen or the fridge, so that I look at it and I see it. Keeps it, because a lot of times if they go to the back, that's an easy place for them to get lost. So
Yeah.
I'd meal plan them in for a meal, make it as easy as possible for you to just be able to warm it up and go. And if you find that you're always eating too, if you always have too many leftovers, adjust your recipe so you're not making quite so much, because then you're just wasting money in food storage. And if you're a really good cook and you know an older person, start packing up. I have a little old lady who's 92 and she doesn't like the food at her senior living. So I just pack up little single serves of leftovers that I have if I know we're not going to eat them, and I just label them for her. I've got nesting containers, and then once I have a few, I bring them over.
Oh, that's
So,
such a great idea. How,
so
I
you
bet
can also,
she really loves that. That's so great.
she loves it because it's home cooked, and seniors these days are struggling, especially if they're living in a senior living. So it's a good deed. You can use your leftovers. So
Absolutely. And we have Lynn who is sharing with us in the comments that she's always throwing out her yogurt because she forgets they're
yes,
there. So that's a
right.
common issue you brought up.
Yes, yes. And with yogurts, I have a bin that I keep on my top level. I'm going to show you the one that I use. And so I just keep my yogurt and my pudding cups together, and I put it right on the top shelf where I look at it. I often eat yogurt for breakfast because it's quick and easy. So I just put it where I can see it, and you load your new stuff in the back. And when you're loading up your stuff at the beginning of the week after you shop, it's a great time to rotate your old stuff up so that you use it in time. And I also chop up my fruits and vegetables because we do a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables with our meals as our side. And I find that if I don't take the time to do that at the beginning, sometimes just things go too quickly and it's a pain in the butt and we miss it. So it's easier for me to start prepping them in containers that make it easy on that front end, so that when I'm putting a dinner on the table, I can just easily pop it in. So,
Do you have a
the,
recommendation for containers that you really like, a brand of containers that you really prefer or like?
I mean, if you're willing to invest in Pyrex glass containers, you will use them all the time. I would get square over
Okay.
circular. I have circular. I'm eventually going to get them into square ones, but they stack really well. They're easy to see, and the glass is just really good quality. So they last forever. And if you do have old containers, that you're not using, if you're phasing out a plastic or whatever you have left over, hold on to those little containers that you have, set them aside in a spot. I keep a little closet in my basement where I keep organizing tools that I'm not using right now. And then if you're organizing little things in other parts of your house, it's a great time to use those little things. So like the little plastic leftover container can double as a hair tie organizer or something like that. So if you get creative over your containers, you might be able to use them somewhere else.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So should we talk about just some general organizing principles for everything else?
Yes, let's dive in.
All right. So lastly, it's, I think, thinking about your actual space and the way that you use your kitchen, it's really important to be strategic in how you organize everything else. So that's all of your non-food items. So like, for example, I put in my old kitchen, I didn't have a lot of shelf space. So I had to put one thing in the cabinet and then another thing in the front of it. And it was really annoying because I always had to pull something out to get to what I needed in the back. So if there's any way to do it where you can make it as easy as possible to get the tools you need the most, do that. And think about it in terms of like your most valuable players. So what are the kitchen tools that you use the most? For me, it's my frying pan, my kitchen spices, my spatulas and my other tools, and some of the other random things, that my crock pot, my instant pot. So I keep them all in cabinets that are super easy to access. So I can just real quick get them and use them. And I don't give counter space too much. You have to use it pretty much every day to justify being on top of the counter in our house. Otherwise, it just takes up all of your counter space and it gets a little stressful to look at. And I also tell my clients, get rid of a kitchen tool if it only does one thing. I mean, if you have a toaster oven, a toaster, and a George Foreman, be honest with yourself about what you actually use, how much you use it, and whether the space is worth more than the implement is, because you want a kitchen that doesn't stress you out to use. You want to be able to find what you need easily when you need it. It doesn't make sense to have a million different tools that will make tortillas, and when you have your once yearly taco party and you're just going to buy the tortillas anyway. So be realistic about the tools that you're purchasing and the gifts that you get. And even if you got it as a wedding gift and you never ever use it, I release you from it. So I always tell my clients.
But it has a memory with it, Kielyn. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I always tell my clients, I release you from it. You don't need to have that. It's okay. So the gift has already been given. The money's already been spent. If you're not using it, you have to consider your sanity as much as you consider your space.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to talk about the counter space, because logically, I am with you on the counter space. Like, do not put things out there unless it's something you use on a daily or something that you're MVP, as you say. Yeah. But my family is notorious with my husband especially. So he wants things to be top of mind, which means they're visible to him. Sure. So if he goes and cooks things, it's all on the countertop. And afterwards, he doesn't necessarily put it back. So, do you have any suggestions on how to gently, get your partner to work?
Are you talking about food items, both? Like everything?
Food items, sometimes dishes, even even the dishes that we only use like once a year kind of thing. That like containers, pots, and
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it really is a question of like, if you're down to the things that that you really use, then if you put it away somewhere that it is, I mean, I think it's just all about sanity. What makes you, if you've got the roasting pan you use every year for Thanksgiving, are you really going to forget it exists if you don't have it in a cabinet? And then one thing that I do is when I'm cooking, so especially if I'm baking, I don't want to forget any ingredients. So I will pull everything out that I need for the ingredients. And then as I'm baking and I put in an ingredient, I put it away. So the nice thing about that is that you're putting in every single ingredient, and you're kind of cleaning along the way so that you don't have such a mess when you're done. The other tenet of organizing, which this is also kind of a marriage tip, and I thought it was brilliant, although it's a little sexist, is that, whoever is more bothered by something takes it on, right? So if it's valuable to have your husband cook, which it probably is because everyone wants to have help. Then if it bothers you more, you want cleaning to be done a specific way, then you do it, so you do the trade-off. One person cooks, one person cleans. But ultimately, whoever it bothers more, it should be a family priority. But realistically, knowing that, it's like, okay, well, how do we set ourselves up? I think part of it is really being clear on where things go. A lot of my families, they say, well, until we really knew we had a spot for everything, if it's muddy, it doesn't go away, because, kids need super, super structure, and they need to be absolutely clear. And so do husbands. So they need to know absolutely where everything goes. That really helps. So I can't solve it entirely, but it does help a little bit.
That is a good marriage tip, and one that I've, been implementing by default, because,
Right.
by defense maybe. And Lynn shared also that it's a good idea in terms of how to, keep that counter space open for the things that really matter. She says she lives in a mobile home and has limited counter space and storage.
Totally.
Kielyn, do you have any recommendations in terms of storage? So I also have a very small kitchen, and when I can't shove things underneath, especially pots and pans. So we have one of those narrow drawers for like baking sheets and cookie sheets, which they keep in there. Yep. Perfectly fine. But our stock pots and our bigger pans don't necessarily fit in the single cabinet we have available for that. So we don't really have an option to hang from a hood because our microwave is above our oven. What would you recommend for that?
Okay, so my last kitchen in our old house was very small, and I had very limited cabinet space, very limited counter space. And so what I did is I created an overflow in my basement storage area. So it was only the things that I used very infrequently, or it was back stock. And I just used one of those, you can get them at Home Depot, the kind of utilitarian storage areas. And then I binned everything up in the basement. And it worked really well for me, because the stuff that was in my kitchen was the stuff I used all the time. And if you have the storage for it and the ability to have an overflow, it works really well. Okay. Otherwise, it's just, you have to be able to fit it somewhere. So I don't like people putting heavy things over the top of their heads for safety reasons, but just being creative about where you put things, I think, because you can't create space if you don't have it. So then you just need to get down to what you really, really use. And it's more about efficiency and things that do multiple things. So maybe if you're not using the stock pot all the time, you'd come up with you'd get an instant pot that you can also use as a stock pot, and you can also use it as a slow cooker and those kinds of things, so that you're reducing the things you need to store.
I think I'm the only one on earth who has not gotten an Instapot, and I'm fine with that. I don't need one. So.
I mean, you can do everything you can do with a crock pot. It's just, what I like about it is that you don't have to have the foresight with your meat. So if you forget to unfreeze your meat, it's really easy to just pop it in and get it done. And it doesn't, the crock pot has a way of overdoing some of the meats if you have to let it sit for too long. And so I would use an oven timer. So you can sub in an oven timer or a Christmas tree timer or something with your crock pot, so that it doesn't turn on right away, and then you don't get everything overcooked. But the Instant Pot takes away that concern. So
yeah, I hear a lot of good things about it, but it's just not a thing that I'm ready to invest in. Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. It's definitely like an additional thing that if you have a crock pot and you're using that and it's working for you, why fix what isn't broken?
I'm totally there with you. Well, this has been so helpful, Kielyn. You had so many good tips. I will post photos of what she described, including the before and after. You folks have to see this before and after. It's almost like I had a before picture in my kitchen, so I'm gonna try to implement some of these things and hopefully have an after. But I also want to give you a chance, Kielyn, to share a special that you have going on with our folks here who are interested in connecting with you.
Yeah, so if you book through the end of October, so that means contacting me and booking a session, I'm offering a 3-hour session for $150, which is normally $225. So it's a $75 savings. So you contact me through my website, through Facebook on my page. I think Jen will post that. And then, or through Jen, she has my contact info too. And then love to talk to you. We do a free consult call and we can talk all about your project then.
Perfect. And just to clarify, because we have a number of people in the group who are from other parts other than Minnesota, do you do this virtually as well?
Absolutely, I do. So virtual works really well for people that maybe have the motivation to do it, but they just need the system in place to do it. So you would send me a photo. I would create a plan for you. We'd talk through your goals, and then I'd send you some recommended products if that applies, and we go from there. So it's, and actually virtual organizing is a $50, is a one-time $100 fee versus a session, full session in-person fee.
Oh, wonderful. So for those of you who are on a budget and you don't live in Minnesota, totally cool. You can still connect with Kielyn and she can assist you using a variety of tools, and it is a lower price. So if that's a consideration for you, I will post all of her links and her contact information below this video. By the way, this video will remain up in the group for the rest of the weekend before I'll take it down. So I'll take it down sometime on Monday morning. You folks can feel free to comment. Kielyn, will you be able to pop in? I'll tag you if there are people who are commenting so that you can answer any additional questions that come through.
Absolutely. Me too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It has been a treat to have you be our first guest expert here in Wait No More. And I look forward to getting organized. Thank you so much for the tips today.
Have a great day.
You too.